Welcome to Khetz Tutorials, and in this video I'll be teaching you guys how to make a simple makefile. So this assumes that you are working on a Linux system, and I'll just go into this folder or directory and open my terminal to start. So now I'm just going to create my main file. You can call it anything. I'm just calling it main.cpp, and ls just shows what's in the directory, and I have that main.cpp. Other words, I was just looking at this if that is created. So it is indeed created. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Linux commands or the command prompt in general, well, there are a lot of resources which you guys can have a look at to learn about that. But in this tutorial, we're just mainly going to focus on makefiles. So now I have my main.cpp, and I'm just going to open my text editor. You can use anything. I'm just going to use Sublime. And in here, let's write our code. Okay, I'm just going to quickly write a simple file, simple script, and okay. So all this does is it's going to print hello. So this is my code. I'm going to save it. Now, going back to the command prompt, since I'm still in the same directory or file, as you can see, desktop C++ tutorials, makefile. So that's the folder that we were in, this one. In here, if I wanted to compile this main.cpp, usually I just say G++, which is your GNU C++ compiler. That's all that it is, and main.c++. What this will do is it will pre-process, it will compile, and it will link this to an object file. If I now look at my folder, after running that command, I now have 8.out, and I did not specify that anyway. I just ran my G++ main.cpp, and now Linux just automatically did that, or G++ automatically did that. And that is how you usually compile your files in Linux. But imagine having 1,000 files or hundreds of files. You wouldn't want to type this out each time. And that is where makefiles come in. So if you run that file, this is how you run your file in Linux. So ./a.out. And as you can see, it says hello, which is what we expected our program to do. So now if you have a lot of files, as I said, you wouldn't want to manually type out your G++, then main, then the next file, then the next file, and so on. It would be too long. And makefiles are built for that. They're built to compile everything all at once, and they're built to form relationships between files. And here's what I mean by that. So we're going to let's remove this from our folder, and let's come back to Sublime. And here in Sublime, or any text editor which you're using, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to save this as in the same folder, called makefile. With no extension, just say makefile. So I'm in the same folder, as you can see, then I'm going to save. So this is the start of my makefile. And before we talk about it, let's just do some sketching. So I'm going to quickly explain the general structure of a makefile. So a makefile has a target, and you have a colon. On the other side, you have dependencies. So this target is what we're trying to build or make. Then these dependencies are all the files or anything that this target depends on. So if these change, or if these files change, now the command, which is the next part, so you're going to tab. So this is a tab, then have a command down here. So if these dependencies change, this command is going to run, and that will ultimately build the target. As an example, if I have a file called main, I'm trying to build an executable or a file called main, and this is dependent on main.cpp, and the command that I want to run is a command which we had previously. So G++, in this case, I've added the flag /c, which means compile, and say main.cpp. So now with a makefile, it follows these targets, or it executes the commands based on what you put in the terminal. So if I say make run, it will run the command which is associated with the target of run. if I just say make, it'll start at the top and execute everything going down. So once again, the general structure of a makefile is you have a target and you have all of the files that the target depends on. Then you have a command. And once again, you have a lot of resources which you can use to find out more about these commands. But I'm going to explain the makefile which we're going to make today. So let's start. So let's start our makefile. We want to have an executable, and an executable is just a file which you're finally going to run. Let's call it main because our CPP was called main.cpp. You can call it anything in the world, right? And with C++, when you compile your code, it's going to form an object file, and that object file will finally be converted to an executable. So if I were to write that, firstly, we're going to compile. And when we compile, we're going to have a file with a .o extension, which is an object file. So when you compile, you have an object file. The object file will help you build or link to an executable. And this is the file which you're finally going to run to get our hello. So G++ main.cpp previously did all of these things for us. So just by running this one command, all of these things happened, and that's why we had a.out previously. But now we're going to manually do all of these in our makefile. And after making our makefile, we just have to say make or make run, and everything will run for us. So let's go back to our makefile. So now I said main is the name of an executable or what we're going to finally run. And main.o is the object file which we're going to build. And if we use G++, which now links this object file to the executable. So this flag is used to link an object file to an executable. Another way to write this would be to start with the flag, then have the name of the executable, then the object file. And if you had many files, you'd list all of them up here, and you'd also have them down here in the command. But now we just have one object file, which is going to be built from main.c++. So we have to build this object file, and it is built from this dependency called main.cpp, which is our file. And to build it, so remember, we have a target, we have a dependency in the command. So we execute the command so that the dependency builds the target. So now here, our target is the object file, our dependency is main.cpp, and the command which we're going to run to make that target is G++ compile main.c++, and that will give us our object file. Then finally, when we run this program, I said when we started that this will be our executable. It'll be the final thing that we run. And the convention in Linux is you're going to have this like that. So ./main will run our program. Remember previously when I started, I said ./a.out in my terminal, and that ran my a.out program. And finally, this is just for housekeeping. We have clean, and this will remove all files which have a .o extension. So R is recursive removal and F is basically forcing it to delete. And if it's not there, it will just ignore that. And the asterisk just means everything that has a .o. So that is not part of the compilation or part of the pre-processing or assembly or linking the files. This is just to clean up our folder or directory when we're done. So if for whatever reason you want to remove all of the object files, then this is what you do. You just type in your terminal, make, clean, and it will remove all of them. Okay, so we can save this, come back to our terminal, and we can also view what's happening in the folder itself, right? So let's view what's happening as we work in the terminal. So now I am going to type make and look at what happens. So it executed our first command, and it executed the linking of the object file to main. And you might ask, why did it not start at the top? Well, we need the object file before we can link the object file to the executable. So before we get the object file, or the way that we're actually going to get the object file is by compiling this. So it follows the correct order that it's supposed to, and so you don't have to worry about that in the makefile. So now, if you look at this folder, we now have main.o, which is what we expected. It's an extra file which was created just from our commands, and we also have main, which is our executable. And as I said, if you want to remove all of the object files, you just say make clean. And if you saw in this folder, that main.o is now deleted basically. So that's what that is for. But we aren't really interested in moving files or deleting them, all of that. All we want is our file to run. So we have an executable called main, and we can just say ./main. And as you can see, we have our program which says hello. Another way to combine both of these steps, so the first step was to make, right? So that was the first step. And the second step would be ./main. So whatever your executable is called, you just say ./ and the name of that, then enter, and your program will run. If you want to combine these two steps, you can just say make run. And now you can see that it runs the executable for you, and you have your program hello. So if I try to make again, it will say main is up to date because I haven't changed anything in my main.c++. But if I change it to makefile tutorial complete, then run that make again, it will recompile because there are changes in the dependency. Remember that main.cpp is the dependency, or it forms our executable, and if we change anything there, it has to recompile again and again and again. So don't expect your program to do or to execute the changes if you haven't recompiled it. So whenever you change your files, please make sure that you recompile so that the changes can be seen. As you can see, make run, it ran our executable, and we now have makefile tutorial complete. That is what we have in our main.cpp. So I hope this is a good introduction into makefiles, and you understood the different parts, and you can use a lot of flags, and the flags are just these things that have a dash and a letter, and they basically describe the behavior of your compiler, and they also describe some additional things which you'd want to have. So I'll link a few resources in the description just for you guys to go through, but I hope this brief tutorial was helpful. So that is all.